thank you, Minister, for bringing forward this important bill. We do hope to support it, potentially with a few amendments along the way. But to go through some of the important components of the bill, Section 22, the establishment of the licensing authority as a designated competent authority in respect of scheduled activities to recognise foreign qualification. I think this is really, really important, not only within this bill, but I actually think it sets an important precedent for other bills that may work across a variety of other sectors. For example, since the beginning of the pandemic, countless industries have suffered staff shortages and continue to do so. The solutions to these shortages are often complex. In education, for example, teacher shortages have been caused by the cost of living, housing, and crucially in the case of this bill, regulation. There is no effective and timely process for teachers to translate their overseas qualifications and experience into employment here, which is why the establishment of a licensing authority as a designated competent body to do just that in the construction industry is more than welcome, and I believe sets a very important precedent, one we look forward to seeing more of the detail in terms of how it works, and hopefully we can transfer it to it. In Section 9 of the competent licensing, we find ourselves living through a housing crisis, which we hear stories from our constituents about every single day, which has been allowed to proceed unabated. A radical increase in the construction of social and affordable homes is a necessary component of tackling this emergency. However, an expansion in the workforce is needed to achieve these goals, obviously. Too often in public service we see bodies which are unsuited to their assigned function, and so the proactive licensing authority must be fit for the purpose. If it's not, workforce shortages will remain and standards will continue to drop. This authority must have within its staff a sufficient expertise and knowledge in relation to construction, in relation to the work and in relation to the training. Though licensing must become quicker and speed should never be the detriment of standards. This country has a dark recent history when it comes to the construction scandals. The Mika scandal, another grim legacy of the boom era and shoddy construction which may never be allowed to happen again. And I know some aspects I'm not sure contained within this bill, but for example the NBCO, the National Building Control Office, up until this time last year, and I'm not sure you might answer, only had 4 staff working across 31 local authorities with a budget of 564,000, culminating in 18,000 per local authorities, working with inspecting 1,100 quarries. I mean, we need to see better than that. The burden of rebuilding was left into those affected who suffered great financial and indeed mental strife. However, the issue of lax building standard is one that is broader than the Mika scandal. We have seen it before with poverty and with construction defects in apartments built during the Celtic Tiger. As many as 100,000 apartments across the country have serious building defects, such as fire safety issues. Homeowners of the state are persistently left with the liability of paying for expensive building repairs, while construction companies, developers and quarry owners walk away from the mess that they've made, and in some cases, in many cases actually, are allowed to re-enter the industry unchecked. The state cannot keep picking up the tab for negligence by the construction and the quarry sectors. Strong standards are needed to be enforced, including a rigorous system of testing and independent inspection. In the case of this bill, a purpose-built training and assessment pipeline for workers and tutors which leaves no room for error. It must also be noted that an improved licensing authority without adequate funding will not affect real change in the industry. The Minister must ensure that this project receives suitable backing from the Exchequer. Too often are good ideas allowed to stagnate and suffer because insufficient funding was provided. In Section 12 we discussed the importance of inspection, and for real improvements to be made in the regulation of construction, an emphasis must be placed on the frequency of inspection of workers and tutors. It's all well and good to lay out detail in the new authority with updated standards, but without a roster of qualified inspectors working on a rota which frequently reassesses the competency of the workforce, no new benefits will be observed. It's essential that those who play key roles in the authority must have an awareness of how construction is actually practiced across the country, without an assumption that up to this point all stakeholders have played by the rules, when we know that isn't the case. Only by identifying their past problems can we create a better future. Reassessment of workers and tutors leaves less room for errors, and in the case of construction industry can mean the safety of workers and the public is treated with utmost respect. It's no insult to professionals that inspections should be more frequent, rather. It's a proactive measure for them, their colleagues and their clients that have already outlined some of the deficiencies in relation to the National Building Control Office and in terms of the deficit of staff and budget. In Section 13, the dissemination of information, the new licensing authority must specify on its website which programmes, courses or other training, including safety awareness training, must be undertaken and which qualifications must be held in order to obtain a licence or approval. The website should also, most crucially, outline the process and procedures in place to recognise the training, the experience, the qualification of persons from other member states or third countries. These changes will affect one of the largest industries in the country, and so I believe a wider information campaign should be conducted by the authority that is more than just the website. Incorporating multimedia advertisements may present a more effective way of reaching those who are less online, or those with limited access to the internet, or those whose English isn't their first language. In terms of recognising the training, experience and qualification of those outside Ireland, the matter of equivalence is an important one. In section 13, this bill makes clear that foreign training and experience should be recognised as sufficient for licence if and only if the standard of the training is equal to what we accept in this country as sufficient. However, more information is required to understand this equivalence. Should the qualifications, for example, be recognised as a certain standard by the EU or another regulatory body? How will those travelling from third countries know if their training and experience is at the level required to be equivalent to our standards? A dossier is needed which can highlight which courses in which countries fit the bill for licensing here. Otherwise, some workers may not consider travelling to join our workforce if they are unsure of their eligibility. In section 14 of continuous training, I absolutely welcome the emphasis that is placed on continuous training within the bill, as one aspect which has been absent from many industries across this country. Education should never stop at the point of a particular qualification. Time often erodes our past learnings, and continuous learning is needed to keep them up with emerging technologies, trends and techniques. With many working later into life, it's incredibly important that they receive support to learn new skills while also continuing to hone old ones. This issue is particularly pertinent in relation to construction, where mistakes can and often have been made in that regard. With regular education, inspection and supports, these mistakes will become fewer and fewer. I would like to conclude by highlighting the importance of ensuring there's a continuous belt, a conveyor belt, and incentivising for apprentices to get involved with this industry at a multitude of different levels. Previously, we had in communities such as mine great pathways of people going into plumbing, going into electricians, carpentry. Those pathways seem to have closed up significantly in recent years. Once again, that comes down to issues such as the cost of living. The old payments of €6.84 an hour are simply not sufficient for a person to live in this city and be an apprentice in these crucial industries. Minister Harris previously promised 10 new apprenticeship schemes that would emerge in 2023. The schemes are to take place across tech, across engineering, farming, horticulture. And from what my understanding, only one of these 10 programmes have so far gone live. I think we need to expedite these important measures and see apprenticeships not in the old way of a young person just getting the start, but actually seeing them as essential to workforce from the moment go. We need to ensure that their pay is suitable, adequate to keep up with the cost of living, and they're respected within the workplace, and also are trained in new and emerging techniques. What about it, Carla?